The stagecoach rattled into Fort Worth, Texas on a dusty afternoon in September 1875, and Rebecca Louise pressed her face to the window, watching the frontier town emerge from the heat shimmer like something out of a dream she was not entirely sure she wanted to be having. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman of 32 years with silver threading boldly through her dark brown hair, making her look older than her years, making her wonder if Thomas Reed would take one look at her and send her right back to St. Louis on the next coach out. The letter in her worn leather bag had been clear enough. "I am not looking for a girl," he had written in a firm, angular hand. "I need a woman, someone who knows hardship and has not been broken by it. Someone who can stand beside me in the mountains where I make my living, who will not wilt at the first sign of trouble. If you are young and foolish and dreaming of romance, do not come. If you are strong and practical and looking for a partnership built on respect and hard work, then we might suit each other well." Rebecca had read that letter a dozen times before answering it. She had sat in the tiny boarding house room in St. Louis, listening to the landlady complain about late rent through the thin walls, and she had thought about all the years she had worked her fingers raw in other people's houses, cleaning and cooking and caring for their children while her own youth slipped away like water through cupped hands. She had thought about the gray in her hair that had started appearing when she was just 28, after the fever that had nearly killed her, that had left her weakened for months. She had thought about how men in St. Louis looked past her now, seeking younger faces, prettier smiles. So she had written back with complete honesty. "I am 32 years old and my hair has gone gray early from illness. I am strong again now, stronger than I look. I can cook and clean and tend a garden. I can shoot a rifle because my father taught me before he died. I am not looking for poetry or false promises. I am looking for a life that is my own, even if I must share it with a stranger. If you can accept a woman with gray hair and a practical heart, then perhaps we are suited to each other." His response had come within 3 weeks, along with money for the stagecoach ticket. "Come to Fort Worth. I will meet you there on the 15th of September. We will speak face to face before any decisions are made. If either of us decides we do not suit, I will pay for your passage back to St. Louis. Thomas Reed." Now the stagecoach was pulling to a stop outside the stage office, and Rebecca was gathering her small carpet bag and her courage. The driver opened the door, and she stepped down into the Texas heat, her dark traveling dress already making her feel like she was standing in an oven. Fort Worth was bustling with activity, cowboys driving cattle through the wide dirt streets, merchants hawking their wares, women in bonnets hurrying between shops with baskets on their arms. Rebecca stood beside her trunk, which the driver had hauled down from the top of the coach, and looked around for a man who matched the brief description Thomas Reed had given her. Tall, he had written, brown hair worn longer than is fashionable, beard. "I will be the one who looks like he belongs in the mountains, not the town." She did not have to wait long. A man was walking toward her from across the street, and even from a distance, Rebecca could see that he was unlike any man she had ever encountered in St. Louis. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they seemed to block out the sun. His hair was indeed brown and long, pulled back at the nape of his neck with a leather cord, and his beard was full and neatly trimmed. But it was his build that made her breath catch. His arms, revealed by rolled-up shirt sleeves, were corded with muscle, his chest broad and powerful beneath the worn cotton of his shirt. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who was utterly comfortable in his own skin, who had no need to prove anything to anyone. His eyes, she saw as he drew closer, were a striking gray-green, the color of pine trees in morning mist. They were studying her with the same careful assessment she was giving him. "Rebecca Louise?" he asked, his voice a deep rumble that matched his size. "Yes," she said, pleased that her own voice came out steady. "Thomas Raid." "Tom," he said. "Nobody calls me Thomas except my mother, and she has been dead 10 years. He looked at her in silence for a long moment, and Rebecca forced herself not to fidget under that measuring gaze. She knew what he was seeing. A woman of medium height, neither pretty nor plain, with gray hair that she had not bothered to dye, wearing a dress that was clean and mended but clearly not new. A woman who looked tired and practical and older than 32. "Your letter said your hair went gray from illness," Tom said finally. "Are you still weak? I need to know the truth." "I am not weak," Rebecca said firmly. "The fever was 4 years ago. I recovered fully. The gray hair stayed, but my strength came back." "Good," he said. He reached down and lifted her trunk as though it weighed nothing at all, settling it on his shoulder. "My wagon is this way. We will get a meal and talk. Then you can decide if you want to go through with this, and I will decide the same." Rebecca picked up her carpet bag and followed him through the dusty streets. Men nodded to Tom as they passed, and she noticed that several of them looked at her with undisguised curiosity. News traveled fast in a frontier town, it seemed. Everyone would know by nightfall that Tom Reed's mail-order bride had arrived with gray hair and a face that was not young. The wagon was outside a general store, a sturdy vehicle pulled by 2 strong horses. Tom loaded her trunk into the back with easy strength, then offered her his hand to help her up onto the seat. His palm was calloused and hard, his grip gentle despite the obvious power in his fingers. They went to a small restaurant on the main street, and Tom ordered steak and potatoes for both of them without asking what she wanted. Rebecca might have bristled at that in another situation, but she was hungry, and steak sounded perfect. While they waited for the food, Tom leaned back in his chair and studied her again. "Tell me why a woman with your skills would answer an advertisement for a mail-order bride," he said. "You said you can cook and clean and tend a garden. You could find work anywhere." "I have been finding work everywhere," Rebecca said. "Working in other people's houses, caring for other people's children, cleaning other people's dirt. I wanted something of my own, even if that something includes a husband I have never met." "You said you can shoot," Tom said. "My father had no sons," Rebecca said. "He taught me to shoot and hunt. I was decent at it before he died." "How long ago did he die?" 12 years, Rebecca said. "My mother died 2 years after that. I have been on my own since then." "No siblings," a brother who died young. "A sister who married and moved to California. I have not heard from her in 5 years. Tom nodded slowly. "And you never married?" Rebecca met his eyes steadily. "I had offers when I was younger. I was foolish enough to wait for love. By the time I realized love was not coming, the offers had stopped." The food arrived, and they ate in silence for a few minutes. Rebecca was aware of Tom watching her, but she refused to let it make her self-conscious. She ate with good appetite, not picking at her food the way some women did when they wanted to seem delicate. "I live 10 miles outside of town," Tom said finally. "In the mountains. I trap and hunt, and I have a small cabin that I built myself. It is not fancy. 1 room for now, though I have been planning to add on. There is a stream nearby for water and good land for a garden. The nearest neighbor is 3 miles away. It is isolated and it is hard work, especially in winter. If you are looking for society and dances and church socials every Sunday, you will not find it there." "I am not looking for those things," Rebecca said. "What are you looking for, Tom? Why do you need a wife?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers wrapped around his coffee cup. "I am 35 years old," he said finally. I have lived alone in those mountains for 8 years, and I have built a good life there, but I am tired of being alone. I want someone to talk to at the end of the day. I want someone to share the work with, and I want children if God wills it. I want sons and daughters who will know how to live on the land, who will be strong and capable. Why not marry someone from town? Rebecca asked. There must be young women here who would have you. Tom's mouth twisted in something that was not quite a smile. Young women want things I cannot give them. They want pretty words and romance and a house in town with neighbors nearby. They look at me and see a mountain man who is too rough, too big, too different. And I look at them and see girls who will break the first time things get hard. I need a woman, not a girl. Someone who has already been tested by life and found her strength. Rebecca felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of a knot she had not even realized was there. So my gray hair does not bother you? No, Tom said simply. It tells me you have lived. That is what I need. They finished their meal and Tom paid the bill. Outside, the sun was beginning to lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tom looked at her seriously. I have a room at the boarding house where I stay when I come to town, he said. You can take it tonight. I will sleep in my wagon. Tomorrow morning you can give me your answer. If you want to go back to St. Louis, I will take you to the stage office and pay for your ticket. If you want to go through with this, we will go to the preacher and be married, and then I will take you home to the mountains. Rebecca nodded. That is fair. The boarding house was clean and simple, and the woman who ran it, Mrs. Patterson, gave Rebecca a knowing smile as Tom handed over payment for the room. He is a good man, Mrs. Patterson said quietly as Tom went back out to the wagon to fetch Rebecca's trunk. Quiet but good. You could do worse. I know, Rebecca said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. That night, lying in the narrow bed in the boarding house, Rebecca thought about the decision she needed to make. She thought about Tom Reed with his mountain man size and his direct way of speaking. She thought about the cabin 10 miles from town, about the isolation and the hard work. She thought about the alternative, which was going back to St. Louis and the boarding house with thin walls and the endless succession of other people's houses to clean. She thought about how Tom had looked at her gray hair and seen strength instead of age, how he had not once looked disappointed by her appearance, how he had spoken to her as an equal, asking honest questions and expecting honest answers. By the time dawn light began creeping through the window, Rebecca had made her decision. Tom was waiting outside the boarding house when she came down in the morning, her carpet bag in hand. He took one look at her face and nodded slowly. You are staying, he said. I am staying, Rebecca confirmed. They were married an hour later in the small church on the edge of town, with Mrs. Patterson and the store owner serving as witnesses. The preacher was an older man with kind eyes, and he did not even blink at Rebecca's gray hair. He asked them the traditional questions, and they each said their vows in clear, steady voices. When Tom slipped the simple gold band on Rebecca's finger, his hands were gentle, and when he kissed her at the preacher's instruction, his lips were soft against hers, asking rather than demanding. They signed the marriage certificate, and then they were husband and wife, two strangers who had chosen to build a life together based on honesty and mutual need. Tom drove the wagon out of Fort Worth with Rebecca sitting beside him, her trunk secured in the back alongside supplies Tom had purchased. The town fell away behind them, and the landscape opened up into rolling hills and scrubland, with mountains rising in the distance. Tell me about your cabin, Rebecca said as the wagon rolled north. Tom glanced at her, and she thought she saw approval in his eyes at the practical question. It is built of logs I cut myself, he said. One main room with a fireplace for cooking and heat, a good roof that does not leak, A loft where I sleep now, though I will need to build a proper bedroom now that you are here. There is a lean-to for the horses and a smokehouse for meat. The stream is 50 yards from the door, cold and clean. Good fishing there if you know how." "Do you know how?" Rebecca asked. "Yes," Tom said. "I will teach you if you want to learn." "I would like that," Rebecca said. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Rebecca found herself studying her new husband from the corner of her eye. In the daylight, she could see the details she had missed before. The small scar along his jaw. The way his hands held the reins with easy confidence. The breadth of his shoulders and the way his muscles moved beneath his shirt as he handled the horses. He was, she realized, quite possibly the most masculine man she had ever seen. There was nothing soft about him, nothing civilized in the city sense. He was all hard muscle and quiet strength, a man who had carved a life out of the wilderness with his own 2 hands, and he had chosen her. Gray hair and all, the thought made her feel something she had not felt in years. Valued, wanted, seen for who she actually was instead of who men wished she would be. They stopped at midday to rest the horses and eat the food Mrs. Patterson had packed for them. Tom spread a blanket in the shade of a cottonwood tree, and they sat together eating cold chicken and biscuits. The September heat was considerable, but a breeze provided some relief. "How long have you been trapping in these mountains?" Rebecca asked. 8 years, Tom said. "I came west from Ohio after my parents died. My father had a small farm there, but I had 3 older brothers who wanted it more than I did. I took my inheritance in cash and headed for Texas. Worked cattle for a while, but I did not like being around that many people all the time. Heard about good trapping in these mountains and came up here to see for myself. Built the cabin that first year and have been there ever since. You go to town often?" "Once a month for supplies and to sell pelts," Tom said. "More often in winter, less in summer." "What is winter like up there?" "Cold," Tom said simply. "Snow. We will need to stock up on supplies before the first freeze. Flour, salt, coffee, anything we cannot grow or hunt ourselves. The stream does not freeze all the way through, so we will have water. And I keep a good supply of firewood cut. You will need warmer clothes than what you brought from St. Louis." Rebecca nodded, making mental notes. She had lived through Missouri winters, which could be bitter. Texas mountain winters would likely be similar. They reached the cabin in late afternoon, and Rebecca got her first look at what would be her home. It was larger than she had expected, solidly built from logs that had been carefully notched and fitted together. The roof was made of split shingles, and there was a stone chimney rising from one end. The door was thick wood with real glass windows on either side. It was not fancy, but it was well made and strong, exactly what she would have expected from Tom Reed. Tom helped her down from the wagon and opened the door. Inside, the cabin was dim and cool after the heat of the day. Rebecca looked around, taking in every detail. There was a large fireplace dominating one wall with a cooking crane and a Dutch oven. A sturdy table and 2 chairs sat in the center of the room. Shelves lined another wall, holding supplies and equipment. A ladder led up to a loft where Rebecca could see the edge of a bed. The floor was packed earth, swept clean. Everything was tidy and organized, the home of a man who lived alone and took care of his space. "It needs a woman's touch," Tom said, and there was uncertainty in his voice for the first time since she had met him. "I know it is not much." "It is more than I have had in a long time," Rebecca said honestly. She walked to the shelves and ran her fingers along the wood. "These are well made." "I built them," Tom said. He was standing in the doorway watching her, and Rebecca realized he was nervous about what she thought. The knowledge made her like him even more. This strong, capable man cared about her opinion. "You have done good work here," she said firmly. "It is a fine home, Tom." He relaxed visibly, his shoulders dropping. "I will bring in your trunk," he said, "and I will sleep in the lean-to tonight. Give you privacy until you are comfortable." Rebecca turned to look at him. "We are married," she said. "I did not expect separate sleeping arrangements." Tom met her eyes steadily. "I want you to be certain," he said. "This is all new. I do not want you to feel pressured." "I am certain," Rebecca said. She was surprised to find that she meant it. She had expected to need time, to need to work up her courage. But something about Tom made her feel safe. His strength was not threatening. His size was not frightening. He was a man who had shown her nothing but respect and consideration since the moment they met. "Then I will build a proper bedroom for us," Tom said. "Starting tomorrow. For tonight, we will make do." He brought in her trunk and the supplies from the wagon while Rebecca explored the cabin more thoroughly. There was a root cellar accessed through a trapdoor in the floor, already stocked with potatoes, onions, and jars of preserved vegetables. Tom had clearly been taking care of himself well, but Rebecca could see a dozen ways she could make things better, more efficient, more comfortable. They made supper together, Rebecca cooking salt pork and beans while Tom sliced bread he had bought in town. They ate at the table as the sun set outside the windows, painting the mountains in purple and gold. "What should I do tomorrow?" Rebecca asked. "While you are building." "Whatever you see that needs doing," Tom said. "Look around, figure out what you need. Make a list, and we will go to town in a few days for supplies. This is your home now too, Rebecca. You do not need to ask my permission for everything." Rebecca nodded slowly. She was not used to such freedom, such trust. In all the houses where she had worked, she had been told exactly what to do and how to do it. Having agency over her own domain was strange and wonderful. They cleaned up after supper, and then Tom went outside to check on the horses while Rebecca prepared for bed. She had brought a nightgown in her carpet bag, and she changed into it in the privacy of the cabin, her fingers trembling slightly with nerves she had not expected to feel. When Tom came back inside, he banked the fire for the night and climbed the ladder to the loft. Rebecca followed, her heart beating hard. The loft was small, just enough room for the bed and a little space on either side. The bed was a proper frame with rope supports and a mattress stuffed with straw and covered with blankets. Tom had removed his boots and shirt, and in the dim light from the fireplace below, Rebecca could see the full extent of his muscular build. His chest was broad and defined, his arms thick with strength. He looked like he could snap a man in half with his bare hands, and yet he was looking at her with such gentleness that she felt her nervousness ease. "Come here," he said softly, holding out his hand. Rebecca took it and let him draw her closer. He cupped her face in his big hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones, and then he kissed her again, deeper than he had at the church. His mouth was warm and sure, and Rebecca found herself kissing him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart under her palms. "Are you frightened?" Tom asked against her lips. "No," Rebecca said, and realized it was true. "Are you?" He laughed, a low rumble that she felt as much as heard. "Yes," he admitted. "I have not been with anyone in a long time. I want to do right by you." His honesty disarmed her completely. Rebecca leaned into him, and his arms came around her, careful of his strength. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other, and then Tom drew her down to the bed. He was gentle with her, patient and attentive, and if there was awkwardness in their first joining as husband and wife, there was also tenderness. Tom took his time, making sure she was comfortable, making sure she was with him every step of the way. And when it was over, he held her close, her head on his chest, his hand stroking her gray-streaked hair like it was the finest silk. "Thank you," he said into the darkness. "For what?" Rebecca asked, "For coming here," Tom said. "For taking a chance on me." "Thank you for wanting me," Rebecca said. "Gray hair and all." "I like your gray hair," Tom said. "It makes you look distinguished, wise." Rebecca smiled against his chest. "You are just trying to make me feel better." "No," Tom said seriously. "I mean it. Every word." He pulled her closer, and Rebecca felt herself relaxing completely for the first time in what felt like years. She fell asleep wrapped in her mountain man husband's arms, feeling safer and more content than she could ever remember feeling. The next morning, Rebecca woke to find Tom already up and dressed, working on cutting logs outside for the new bedroom. She made breakfast, frying eggs and bacon, and called him in to eat. They sat together at the table, and Rebecca found herself watching the way the morning light caught in Tom's hair, the way his hands moved as he ate, strong and sure. After breakfast, Tom went back to his building, and Rebecca began to explore the property in earnest. The garden plot was overgrown with weeds, but she could see it had good soil. The stream was as beautiful as Tom had described, cold and clear, tumbling over smooth rocks. There were berry bushes growing wild along its banks, and Rebecca made a mental note to pick them before the birds got them all. She spent the morning weeding the garden and taking stock of what was there. Tom had planted potatoes, beans, and squash, but the weeds had gotten ahead of him. Rebecca worked steadily, her hands remembering the rhythm of garden work from her childhood, before she had become a hired girl in St. Louis. At midday, she made sandwiches and took them out to where Tom was working. He had already made significant progress on the frame for the new room, his powerful shoulders flexing as he lifted and fitted the heavy logs. He stopped when he saw her, sweat gleaming on his face and chest, and smiled. "You are going to spoil me," he said, taking the sandwich gratefully. "Good," Rebecca said. "You have been taking care of yourself alone for too long. You deserve some spoiling." They sat in the shade together, and Tom told her about the work he was doing, how he was planning to make the bedroom large enough for a real bed and a wardrobe, with a door that closed for privacy. "If children come," he said, a faint blush coloring his cheeks, "they can have the loft." Rebecca felt her own face warm. "That is good planning," she said softly. "I have been planning for a long time," Tom admitted. "Ever since I decided to place that advertisement, I have been imagining what it would be like to have someone here with me, to have a family." "And now I am here," Rebecca said. "What do you think so far?" Tom looked at her for a long moment. "I think I am the luckiest man in Texas," he said simply. The words hit Rebecca square in the chest, making her breath catch. No one had ever made her feel lucky before. She had been the practical choice, the convenient option, the girl who would do. But Tom looked at her like she was a treasure he had found, like her gray hair and her age and her lack of beauty were not flaws but simply parts of who she was. She leaned over and kissed him, tasting salt and summer on his lips. Tom made a surprised sound, then kissed her back, his hand coming up to cup the back of her head. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked, echoing her words from the night before. "For seeing me," she said. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Tom worked on building the new bedroom while also tending to his trap lines and hunting for meat. Rebecca worked in the garden, cooked meals, cleaned the cabin, and slowly began to make the space feel like a home. She sewed curtains from fabric Tom brought from town, planted herbs in pots near the door, organized the supplies on the shelves in a way that made more sense. They talked while they worked, telling each other stories from their lives before they met. Tom told her about growing up on the farm in Ohio, about his loud, boisterous family, and how he had always felt like he did not quite fit. Rebecca told him about her childhood, about her father teaching her to shoot, about the years after her parents died when she had scraped by on her own. "You are the strongest woman I have ever met," Tom said one evening as they sat together on the porch he had built, watching the sun set over the mountains. "I do not feel strong," Rebecca said. "Most of the time I feel like I am just surviving." "That is what strength is," Tom said. "Surviving when things are hard, not giving up. You could have given up a dozen times, Rebecca. You could have found an easy way out, but you kept going. That is strength." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. She had never thought of it that way. She had always felt like she was failing, like she was not good enough, not pretty enough, not young enough. But Tom saw something different when he looked at her. The bedroom was finished in 2 weeks, and Tom built a proper bed frame to go in it, large enough for his considerable size. He brought straw from town for a new mattress, and Rebecca stitched the ticking and stuffed it, making it soft and comfortable. They moved into the new room, and it felt like a fresh start, like they were building something real and lasting together. In October, Tom took Rebecca to town for supplies, and she saw how people looked at them. Some with curiosity, some with approval, a few with judgment. Tom ignored them all, keeping his hand on the small of Rebecca's back as they moved through the general store, helping her pick out fabric for new dresses and warm clothes for winter. Mrs. Patterson saw them and hurried over, beaming. "I knew you two would suit," she said. "I could tell the moment I saw you together. How are you finding life in the mountains, Rebecca?" "I love it," Rebecca said, and realized she meant it. The isolation that might have bothered some women was a blessing to her. No one was watching her, judging her, finding her wanting. It was just her and Tom and the mountains, and the work they did together. They had supper at the restaurant before heading back, and Tom told her stories about some of the other trappers and mountain men who lived in the area. "You will meet them eventually," he said. "They are good people, most of them. Rough around the edges but honest, like you," Rebecca teased. "I am not rough," Tom protested with mock offense. "I am refined." Rebecca laughed, and Tom's eyes lit up at the sound. "I like hearing you laugh," he said. "You should do it more often." "Give me reasons to laugh then," Rebecca said. "I will do my best," Tom promised. As autumn deepened into winter, Rebecca found herself falling in love with her husband. It was not the wild, passionate love she had dreamed of as a girl. It was something deeper and steadier, built on respect and partnership, and the 100 small kindnesses they showed each other every day. It was Tom bringing her wildflowers he found on his trap lines. It was Rebecca making sure his coffee was hot when he came in from the cold. It was the way they moved around each other in the small cabin, learning each other's rhythms and patterns. It was the way Tom held her at night, his big body curled around hers, making her feel safe and cherished. One evening in late November, as snow fell softly outside and the fire crackled in the hearth, Tom pulled Rebecca into his lap and kissed her forehead. "I need to tell you something," he said. Rebecca's heart jumped. "What is it?" "I love you," Tom said simply. "I know we married as strangers, and I know we said it would be a practical arrangement. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being practical for me. I love you, Rebecca. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you have made this cabin into a home. I love the way you laugh and the way you look at me like I am something special. I love your gray hair because it is yours. I love everything about you." Rebecca felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could feel this way at my age. I thought that part of my life was over. But you make me feel like I am 18 again, like anything is possible." Tom kissed her then, long and deep, and carried her to their bedroom, where he showed her with his body what his words had already expressed. They made love with the snow falling outside and the fire warming the cabin, and Rebecca felt complete in a way she had never felt before. Winter settled in fully after that, and Tom had been right. It was cold and hard, with snow piling up outside and the temperature dropping below freezing for days at a time. But they had prepared well, and the cabin was warm and snug. Tom checked his trap lines every few days, bringing back beaver and fox pelts that Rebecca helped him cure and stretch. She learned the work quickly, her practical nature making her a fast student. They could not go to town as often in winter, but Tom had stocked up well, and Rebecca was skilled at making meals that stretched their supplies. She made stews from dried beans and salt pork, baked bread in the Dutch oven, fried potatoes with onions. They ate well, and Tom told her more than once that he had never been so comfortable in winter. One night in January, a fierce blizzard blew in, howling around the cabin and piling snow up against the walls. Tom brought in extra firewood, and they spent 3 days essentially trapped inside while the storm raged. But instead of feeling restless or anxious, Rebecca found herself content. She and Tom played cards, told stories, made love in the warm cocoon of their bed while the wind screamed outside. "I am glad you are here," Tom said, holding her close. "I do not know how I survived winters alone before." "You are never going to be alone again," Rebecca promised. In February, Rebecca began to suspect she might be with child. Her monthly courses, which had been regular as clockwork for years, did not come. Her breasts were tender, and she felt tired in a way that was different from the usual tiredness of winter. She said nothing to Tom at first, not wanting to get his hopes up if she was wrong. But by March, when the snow was starting to melt and the first signs of spring were appearing, she was certain. She waited until evening, until they had finished supper and were sitting together by the fire, and then she took Tom's hand and placed it on her belly. "I think we are going to have a baby," she said. Tom's eyes went wide and then a grin split his face, so joyful and pure that Rebecca felt her heart expand. "A baby," he said. "Really, really," Rebecca said. "I am almost certain. I think it will come in the fall." Tom pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could hardly breathe. "We are going to have a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "You and me. A family." "A family," Rebecca echoed and felt tears on her face again. Happy tears this time, tears of joy and gratitude for the life she had found in these mountains with this man. Tom was impossibly tender with her after that, insisting she not work too hard, bringing her water and food even when she protested that she was perfectly capable of getting it herself. But Rebecca let him fuss, understanding that it was his way of showing love, of protecting the precious cargo she carried. Spring turned to summer, and Rebecca's belly grew round and firm. Tom finished building a cradle, working on it in the evenings by firelight, sanding the wood until it was smooth as silk. He took Rebecca to town in June to see the doctor there, an older man who examined her and pronounced her healthy and strong. "You have good hips," the doctor said frankly. "You should do fine, even with a first baby at your age. Just take care of yourself and send your husband for me when the time comes." Tom bought more supplies than usual, stocking up on things the doctor said they would need for the birth. He cleaned the cabin from top to bottom, organized the root cellar, chopped extra firewood even though it was summer. Rebecca watched him with amusement and love, this big, strong man made anxious by the thought of her giving birth. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she told him. "I will be fine." "I know," Tom said, "but you are my woman and this is my baby. I am allowed to worry." In August they had visitors. 3 other mountain men rode up to the cabin one afternoon, rough-looking men with long hair and beards and clothes that had seen better days. But they were polite, tipping their hats to Rebecca and congratulating Tom on his marriage and impending fatherhood. "We heard you got yourself a mail-order bride," one of them said, a man named Jack who had a scar across his forehead. Came to see if it was true. It is true, Tom said, his arm around Rebecca's shoulders. This is my wife, Rebecca. The men stayed for supper, and Rebecca cooked a large meal, stretching their supplies to feed everyone. She liked these men, rough as they were. They treated her with respect, thanking her for the meal and complimenting her cooking. And they clearly respected Tom, deferring to him on several occasions when talk turned to trap lines and hunting. After they left, Tom pulled Rebecca close. "You handled that well," he said. "Some women would have been frightened of men like that." "They were not frightening," Rebecca said. "They were just men who live hard lives, like you." "I am not like them anymore," Tom said. "Not since you came. You have civilized me." Rebecca laughed. "You were plenty civilized before I got here. You just needed someone to appreciate it." In September, as Rebecca's time drew near, Tom became even more watchful. He barely left the cabin, working on small projects near the house so he would be close if she needed him. Rebecca found it equal parts endearing and exasperating. "I am not made of glass," she told him. "I am not going to break." "I know," Tom said, "but humor me." The baby came on a cool evening in late September, almost exactly a year after Rebecca had arrived in Fort Worth. Her pains started in the afternoon, and Tom rode like the devil was chasing him to fetch the doctor from town. By the time they returned, Rebecca was deep in labor, and the doctor barely had time to wash his hands before the baby was making its entrance into the world. It was a boy, strong and healthy, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. Tom held him with such gentleness, such wonder, that Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face. "We have a son," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. "Rebecca, we have a son." They named him Timothy after Tom's father, and he was the joy of their lives. Tom was an amazing father, patient and loving, holding the baby whenever Rebecca needed a break, walking the floor with him when he cried at night. He built a larger cradle, then a crib, already planning for the future. "We will need to add on to the cabin again," he said one evening as they sat together watching Timothy sleep. "If we are going to have more children." "More children," Rebecca said, raising an eyebrow. "Well, yes," Tom said. "If you are willing, I would like Timothy to have brothers and sisters. I grew up with siblings, and even though I did not always get along with them, I am glad I had them." Rebecca leaned against his shoulder. "I would like that too," she said. "A big family, something I never thought I would have." Timothy grew into a happy, healthy baby, and then a toddler, and Tom and Rebecca's love grew along with him. They added on to the cabin, building 2 more rooms, and Tom taught Rebecca more about trapping and hunting until she was as skilled as he was. They worked as partners in everything, raising their son, maintaining their home, building their life together. When Timothy was 2, Rebecca gave birth to a daughter they named Ruth, after Rebecca's mother. She had her mother's gray-streaked hair from birth, a genetic quirk that the doctor said was rare but harmless. Tom loved it, saying Ruth was marked as special from the start. 2 years after Ruth came another son named Robert. And 2 years after that, twin girls, Rose and Rachel. The cabin rang with the sound of children's laughter, and Tom built on even more, until they had a proper house with bedrooms for everyone, and a kitchen that was separate from the main living area. Rebecca looked at her life sometimes, and could hardly believe it was real. She was 40 years old now, with gray hair that was going white at the temples, and she had never been happier. Tom still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. He still brought her wildflowers and told her he loved her. He still held her at night like she was precious and irreplaceable. Their children grew up strong and capable, learning to hunt and trap and live off the land. Timothy became a skilled tracker by the time he was 10. Ruth had a gift for growing things, and the garden flourished under her care. Robert was quiet and thoughtful, always building something or fixing something. The twins were wild and joyful, full of energy and laughter. In the evenings, after the children were in bed, Tom and Rebecca would sit on the porch he had expanded, looking out over the mountains they both loved, and talk about their day. Sometimes they reminisced about how they had met, about that day in Fort Worth when two strangers had decided to take a chance on each other. "I was so nervous when I saw you get off that stagecoach," Tom admitted one night. "I thought you might take one look at me and get right back on." "I was nervous too," Rebecca said. "I thought you would see my gray hair and be disappointed." "I told you then, and I will tell you now," Tom said, taking her hand. "Your gray hair was never a flaw. It was a sign that you had lived, that you had survived things that would have broken a lesser woman. It told me you were strong enough to be my wife, to build this life with me, and I was right." Rebecca leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Tom Reed. I loved you when we were strangers, and I love you now, and I will love you until the day I die." "And I love you, Rebecca Reed," Tom said. "You were exactly what I needed. Not a girl, but a woman, a partner, the love of my life." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars come out over the mountains. Behind them, in the house they had built together, their children slept safe and warm. Around them, the wilderness that had once been lonely was now home. Rebecca thought about the letter Tom had written all those years ago. "I am not looking for a girl, I need a woman," he had said. And she had been that woman, strong enough to stand beside him, brave enough to build a life in the mountains, wise enough to understand that love was not about youth or beauty, but about respect and partnership, and choosing each other every single day. She had come to Texas with gray hair and low expectations, thinking she would settle for a practical arrangement with a stranger. Instead, she had found a love story that was more powerful and true than any she had ever imagined. She had found a man who saw her as she really was and loved her not in spite of it but because of it. She had found a home, a family, a life that was rich and full and completely her own. And as she sat on that porch with Tom's arm around her, and the sound of the wind in the pines and the distant call of an owl hunting in the darkness, Rebecca knew that she would not change a single thing. Not her gray hair, not her age, not the hard years that had come before. All of it had led her here, to this man, to this life, to this perfect moment of contentment and love. Tom kissed the top of her head and Rebecca smiled, feeling more blessed than she had ever dreamed possible. She had answered an advertisement for a mail-order bride, expecting duty and loneliness. Instead, she had found joy and partnership, and a love that grew deeper with every passing year. The mountains rose dark against the starlit sky, and the cabin glowed with warm light behind them. And Rebecca Louise Reed knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly who she was meant to be with. Her mountain man had wanted a woman, not a girl, and she had proven every day since that she was worthy of his faith in her. Their story had started with a letter and a leap of faith. It continued with hard work and honesty and the slow building of trust. And it would go on, through whatever years God granted them, with love as its foundation and respect as its strength. As they finally rose and went inside to their warm bed, Rebecca took one last look at the mountains and whispered a prayer of gratitude for the life she had been given, for the man who slept beside her, for the children who bore their names, for every moment of hardship that had shaped her into the woman Tom had needed her to be. She was the mail-order bride with gray hair who had traveled to Texas not knowing what she would find, and she had found everything, absolutely everything, and that was the best ending of all.